God breaks the woman he intends to use most. Biblical truth. There is a moment in many women's lives when everything that once made sense begins to fall apart at the same time. Strength fades. Confidence cracks. Relationships strain. Prayers feel unanswered, and in the quiet of the night, a painful question forms in the heart. God, why am I being reduced instead of lifted? It feels like loss stacked on loss, like life is pressing down harder the more you try to stay faithful. You're not rebelling. You're not running. You're still praying, still believing, still showing up, yet somehow the weight keeps increasing. Here is a truth that is rarely spoken, gently, yet carries deep comfort once understood. God often allows the woman he plans to use the most to be broken first. Not because she is weak, but because she is dangerous to darkness. Not because she failed, but because what he intends to place within her requires a vessel that can withstand pressure, fire, and responsibility without collapsing. God does not waste pain, and he does not casually wound his daughters. When he allows breaking, it is always intentional. Breaking is not God stepping away from you. It is God moving closer than ever. It is his hands on the clay, applying pressure where pride still lives, where fear still hides, where self-reliance quietly competes with trust. What feels like God dismantling your life is often him dismantling everything that cannot go where he's taking you. The tears you didn't plan to cry, the doors you didn't expect to close, the versions of yourself you had to bury, none of it escaped his attention. You may feel stripped, smaller than before, unsure of who you are now that the old labels no longer fit. But heaven does not see you as diminished. Heaven sees you as being refined. God is not breaking you to humiliate you. He is breaking you to free you from false strength, from shallow identity, from assignments that are too small for what he placed inside you before you were ever born. This message is not for the woman who wants comfort alone. It is for the woman who senses that her pain has meaning, that her story is being shaped for something greater, even if the process feels unbearable right now. If you are in a season where obedience feels costly, where silence feels loud, and where survival itself feels like an act of faith, this is not the end of you. This is preparation. This is the beginning of becoming someone heaven can trust with power, influence, and purpose. Number 1, God breaks before he builds. God has never built anything lasting without first clearing the ground. Before he raises what is strong, he exposes what is weak. Before he entrusts purpose, he removes illusion. And before he uses a woman in power, he often allows her to experience a season where everything she relied on no longer works. This is not destruction. This is construction in its most painful phase. When God begins to break before he builds, he targets false foundations first. These are the things that once gave you stability, your ability to cope, your reputation, your sense of control, your confidence in people, even your spiritual routines. They may not be sinful, but they are insufficient, and God will never place divine purpose on a human-made foundation. So he shakes it. He allows cracks. He lets you feel what it's like when your own strength reaches its limit. This is why the breaking often feels confusing. You didn't do anything wrong. You weren't disobedient. Yet suddenly what used to work doesn't work anymore. The prayer style that once carried you now feels dry. The relationships that once affirmed you now feel distant. The identity that once felt secure now feels fragile. God is not punishing you. He is stripping away what cannot support what is coming. Building without breaking creates collapse later. God refuses shortcuts because he loves you too much to let you crumble under future weight. The woman he is preparing will carry responsibility, influence, spiritual authority, and emotional depth. That kind of calling cannot rest on ego, approval, or self-sufficiency. So God allows the breaking now where it is safer, quieter, and redemptive. What feels like God undoing your life is often him undoing the version of you that would fracture under pressure. He removes the need to be strong all the time. He removes the illusion that you must have answers. He removes the belief that your worth depends on performance. And yes, it hurts, because surrender always hurts before it heals. But listen closely. God never breaks what he doesn't plan to rebuild better. He never empties a woman without intending to fill her with something stronger. The breaking is not the end of your usefulness. It is the beginning of your true formation. What he is preparing to build in you will stand longer, carry more, and impact deeper than anything you could have constructed on your own. Number 2, God breaks the woman who carries a deep calling. Not every woman is broken in the same way, and not every woman is broken to the same depth. The measure of breaking often reflects the weight of the calling God has placed on her life. When heaven entrusts a woman with influence, discernment, spiritual authority, or the ability to shift atmospheres, it also prepares her with pressure. Deep calling requires deep capacity, and capacity is never formed in comfort. God often chooses women who feel deeply, see clearly, and love fiercely. These women tend to carry compassion, intuition, and spiritual sensitivity, long before they understand why. But those same traits, if left unrefined, can become liabilities. Sensitivity without grounding leads to burnout. Compassion without wisdom leads to exhaustion. Passion without surrender leads to collapse. So God allows the breaking not to remove these qualities, but to anchor them. This is why some women endure pain that seems disproportionate to their actions. They suffer loss they didn't invite, battles they didn't choose, and opposition they don't understand. Yet heaven sees what others cannot. A woman whose spirit can carry responsibility without corruption, power without pride, and authority without cruelty. The breaking trains her not to react emotionally, but to respond spiritually. God is careful with who he breaks deeply. He does not place that process on fragile vessels. He places it on women whose spirits can endure refinement without losing their love for him. You may feel like life has demanded more of you than others around you, but that is not neglect, it is trust. Heaven would not invest this level of shaping in someone it did not intend to use. Your pain is not random. It is not proof that God is absent. It is evidence that your life holds weight in the spiritual realm. What you are being trained to carry will require patience, discernment, humility, and resilience that cannot be learned any other way. And when God finally releases what he placed inside you, the depth of your breaking will become the depth of your authority. Number 3, God breaks you in private before using you in public. God is deliberate about where breaking happens. He does not expose his chosen women to unnecessary shame, and he does not refine them under the spotlight. Most of the breaking takes place in hidden places, quiet seasons, isolated moments, and spaces where no applause exists. This is why it often feels like you have been set aside, forgotten, or removed from visibility just when you felt ready to step forward. Privacy is protection. If God were to elevate you before your motives were purified, the attention would destroy what the calling is meant to heal. So he withdraws you. He limits access. He allows misunderstanding. People stop seeing you the way they once did. Invitations fade. Your voice feels quieter in rooms where you once mattered. Not because you lost value, but because God is guarding your future. In the private place, God reshapes your heart without interference. There are no masks to maintain, no expectance to perform for, no image to protect. The loneliness forces honesty. The silence reveals what you truly believe about God when no one is watching. This is where self-promotion dies and obedience is born. This is where you stop needing validation and start needing God. Many women misinterpret this season as rejection. They think they have been sidelined or disqualified. But heaven sees it differently. Public anointing without private refinement leads to public collapse. God would rather let you feel unseen now than exposed later. He is not hiding you to hurt you. He is hiding you to prepare you. What you endure in private determines how you will stand in public. The strength to remain humble, the wisdom to speak at the right time, the discipline to say no when applause calls. These are forged in obscurity. When God finally brings you forward, your foundation will be unshakable, because it was built where only He could see it. Number 4. God breaks what would compete with Him. One of the most painful forms of breaking happens when God touches what you love, lean on, or depend on the most. Not because those things are evil, but because they quietly began to occupy a place in your heart that belongs to Him alone. God is not threatened by relationships, dreams, or desires, but He will not share lordship. When something starts to replace Him as your source of security, identity, or peace, He will intervene. This is why some women experience unexpected loss, betrayal, or disappointment in areas they never imagined shaking. A relationship you trusted fails. A dream you prayed for collapses. A plan you built carefully unravels. It feels cruel at first, almost personal. But what God is really doing is rescuing you from bondage disguised as love. Anything you cannot lose without losing yourself has too much power over you. God breaks emotional dependencies before they become spiritual chains. He allows people to step away, so you learn to stand with Him. He allows doors to close, so you stop defining yourself by outcomes. He allows expectations to die, so intimacy with Him can live. The breaking hurts because attachment always hurts, but freedom always follows. This process exposes where your confidence truly lived. Was it in being chosen, needed, admired, or understood? God does not shame you for this. He gently but firmly removes what competes with His voice, so you can hear Him clearly again. When everything else is stripped away, what remains is faith that is no longer conditional. God is not taking from you. He is repositioning you. What He removes is never greater than what He intends to give. And once He becomes your primary source again, nothing and no one will ever have the power to destabilize you the way they once did. Number 5. God breaks the woman so she can carry others. There is a kind of strength that cannot be learned from books, sermons, or success. It is born only through pain, surrendered to God. When God breaks a woman, He is not making her weaker. He is making her safe, safe for others to approach, safe to listen without judgment, safe to carry burdens without control or pride. This is why the women God uses to heal others are often the ones who have walked through the deepest valleys themselves. Unbroken people tend to give advice. Broken and healed people offer understanding. They don't rush pain. They don't minimize wounds. They recognize silent suffering because they've lived it. God allows certain women to experience betrayal, grief, abandonment, and disappointment, so they can recognize those wounds in others without being told. Their discernment comes from experience, not assumption. Through breaking, God enlarges your capacity. You begin to carry others not as a rescuer, but as a vessel. You learn how to intercede instead of interfering. You learn when to speak and when to stay quiet. Your presence alone becomes comforting because it carries humility, not superiority. People feel safe around you because you don't pretend to be untouched by life. This is also where spiritual authority matures. Authority without compassion becomes harsh. Compassion without boundaries becomes draining. God breaks you, so both can exist together. He teaches you how to stand strong without becoming hard, and how to love deeply without losing yourself. Your wounds, once surrendered, become channels of healing rather than sources of shame. The woman God has broken and healed does not draw attention to herself. She points others to God, because she knows firsthand that only He restores what life shatters. And through her obedience, many will find refuge, clarity, and hope. Number 6. God breaks you until you sound like heaven. There is a moment in the breaking where God begins to touch your voice. Not just the words you speak out loud, but the tone of your spirit, the posture of your heart, and the authority behind your prayers. Before the breaking, your words may have been sincere, but mixed with fear, urgency, or the need to be understood. After the breaking, your voice becomes steady, clear, and aligned with heaven. God breaks the need to be heard, so He can give you something worth hearing. He removes the desperation from your prayers and replaces it with trust. You stop begging and start agreeing with God. Your words no longer come from panic, but from conviction. This is where spiritual authority is formed, not in volume, but in alignment. When you speak, it carries weight because it echoes heaven, not emotion. In this season, God also refines your silence. You learn that not every truth needs to be spoken, and not every battle needs your voice. Discernment grows. Timing becomes sacred. You stop explaining yourself to people who cannot hear you and start speaking boldly where God sends you. Your obedience becomes louder than your opinions. The breaking strips away the need for applause. You no longer speak to impress, convince, or defend. You speak to release what God has entrusted to you. Even your prayers change. They become simpler, deeper, and more confident. You don't need many words, just true ones. When God finishes this work, your voice carries peace even in confrontation, authority even in gentleness, and power even in whispers. You sound like heaven because you have learned to listen to heaven first. Conclusion. If you are in a season where you feel broken, reduced, or emptied, let this truth settle deeply into your spirit. God does not abandon what He breaks. He stays. He watches. He rebuilds. What feels like God taking things away is often Him clearing space for what your current version could not yet carry. The breaking is not a sign that you are failing. It is evidence that God is shaping you with intention. You may not recognize yourself right now. The old confidence may be gone. The old certainty may feel distant. Even the old dreams may look unfamiliar. But what God is forming in you now is not fragile. It is not dependent on people, applause, or perfect circumstances. It is rooted in trust, obedience, and intimacy with Him. And that kind of foundation cannot be shaken. Do not rush this season. Do not compare your process to anyone else's. The woman God is preparing will stand with quiet authority, deep compassion, and unshakable faith. She will not need to announce who she is, because her presence will speak for her. What you endure now is not wasted. It is being woven into purpose. The same God who allowed the breaking is the God who promises restoration. He is not finished with you. He is faithful to complete what He started. And when you finally see what He was building all along, you will understand the breaking was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to reveal who you were always called to be.